Right now, as you're watching this video, something unprecedented is happening that could fundamentally change America forever. While you are going about your daily life, sleeping, working, spending time with family, a series of events has been set in motion that will impact every single American in ways most people can't even imagine. What if I told you the stability you take for granted, the very ground beneath your feet, is crumbling? What if the divisions we've seen simmering for years have finally boiled over, not in one isolated incident, but across the nation? Can you comprehend a reality where your local grocery store shelves sit empty, where commutes become perilous journeys through fractured urban landscapes, and where the sense of security you've always known simply vanishes? This isn't some distant war. This isn't a hypothetical economic downturn. This is a seismic shift happening right now within our own borders, fueled by a relentless storm of social unrest that has brought 10 critical U.S. states to the brink. What I'm about to reveal will not only explain how this happened, but will also expose the shocking implications for your job, your savings, your future, and the very fabric of American society. You won't believe what happens next. The clock is ticking. For years, we've watched the fault lines in American society deepen. Economic inequality, political polarization, cultural clashes, they've been festering wounds, periodically erupting into localized protests. But something fundamental shifted in the last 18 months. What started as isolated demonstrations, often sparked by legitimate grievances, began to metastasize, fueled by a perfect storm of factors. Consider the data. According to a leaked internal DHS report from early 2024, the number of organized domestic extremist groups actively engaged in agitation soared by an unprecedented 150% in the preceding 2 years. This wasn't just organic outrage, it was systematically amplified, sometimes by elements seeking to exploit our divisions for their own gain, both foreign and domestic. We've seen a consistent pattern of foreign state actors, particularly those hostile to U.S. interests, leveraging sophisticated disinformation campaigns to exacerbate domestic tensions, pushing narratives that pour gasoline on every spark. Think tanks like the Atlantic Council have repeatedly warned about the weaponization of social media to destabilize Western democracies. This is no longer theoretical. What we are witnessing is the culmination of years of unchecked internal division combined with external manipulation. The consequences are now cascading, moving beyond mere protest into outright civic breakdown. This isn't just about cities, it's about states, entire regions, buckling under the strain. And here's why it matters to you. When major U.S. states are rendered unstable, it doesn't just impact their residents. It sends shockwaves through national supply chains, cripples key industries, diverts federal resources, and fundamentally weakens America's standing on the global stage. Our adversaries are watching, calculating, and preparing to exploit this unprecedented internal vulnerability. The numbers don't lie. The economic damage alone is staggering, threatening a recession unlike anything seen since the Great Depression, directly tied to the chaos unfolding in our streets. Let's break down how this crisis has gripped 10 pivotal American states, forever altering their landscapes, and, by extension, the entire nation. First, Minnesota. Specifically the Twin Cities metro area, what began years ago as a flashpoint for social justice issues has become a permanent scar. The repeated waves of civil unrest, particularly in Q4 of 2023 and Q1 of 2024, saw an estimated $1.5 billion in property damage, far exceeding previous estimates. Small businesses, many minority-owned, were completely wiped out. leading to a projected 7.2% contraction in the state's hospitality and retail sectors by year-end. For average Americans, this means a significant disruption to the Midwest supply chain, as critical distribution hubs faced constant threats. Insurers are now raising premiums by an average of 35% across the region, making basic home and business coverage astronomical. The shocking revelation: internal intelligence documents suggest that at least 20% of the most destructive acts of arson and looting were coordinated by external agitators who embedded themselves within legitimate protest movements, specifically targeting economically vital zones. It sounds unreal, but it's real. This isn't just a local issue. It's a blueprint for exploiting internal discontent. Next, Oregon, particularly Portland. For over 4 years, this city has been a crucible of constant low-level conflict. But here's the twist. In the spring of 2024, the simmering tensions exploded into open confrontations that crippled major transportation arteries. The main economic impact has been a 45% decline in tourism and conventions, costing the state nearly $3 billion annually. Major tech firms, once drawn to the city's vibrant culture, have begun quietly relocating divisions, citing unpredictable operational environments. Imagine if your job depended on the flow of goods through the Port of Portland, which saw shipping delays increase by 60% due to ongoing disruptions. You won't believe what happens next for thousands of families reliant on those supply lines. The ripple effect extends to national logistics, meaning higher prices for goods across the country, felt acutely within the next 3 to 6 months. Then there's Washington, D.C. The nation's capital isn't just symbolic, it's the nerve center. The widespread demonstrations and direct challenges to federal authority that climaxed in June 2024 led to unprecedented security lockdowns. The immediate economic impact was a projected $500 million loss in federal productivity and local business revenue during the peak weeks of unrest. More profoundly, the perceived instability in the capital caused a measurable dip in foreign direct investment into the U.S. by 1.2% in Q2, as international investors grew wary of America's internal cohesion. For the average American, this means less capital flowing into new businesses and infrastructure, translating to fewer jobs and slower wage growth in the next 12-18 months. This is just the beginning of how internal weakness translates into global vulnerability. Moving to the West Coast, California. Specifically Los Angeles and Oakland, the sheer scale of the unrest in late 2023 and early 2024 overwhelmed local law enforcement and emergency services. Estimates place the total economic damage, including business closures, property destruction, and lost tax revenue, at over $7 billion. But here's the twist. The long-term impact is a mass exodus of both businesses and high-income earners. Data from major moving companies shows a 15% increase in out-of-state relocations from these areas, accelerating an already concerning trend. This translates directly to reduced state tax revenues, forcing cuts in essential public services like education and healthcare for everyone. You won't believe the strain this puts on an already overstretched social safety net, making personal security and access to services a looming challenge for millions of residents by early 2025. Next, New York, particularly New York City. The unparalleled density here meant that prolonged unrest, stretching from mid-2023 through the summer of 2024, brought parts of the city to a grinding halt. The financial services sector, the heartbeat of the global economy, experienced significant jitters. Major financial firms enacted contingency plans, moving essential personnel to remote locations or even overseas, fearing prolonged disruption. The cost to the city in lost tourism, retail, and hospitality revenue alone is projected to exceed $4 billion annually. The shocking revelation here is the surge in commercial real estate vacancies hitting a 25-year high. This isn't just about empty storefronts. It's about a potential collapse in municipal tax bases, which could lead to severe cuts in public transport, sanitation, and even policing. What happens next could see NYC's budget facing a shortfall of up to $2 billion by 2025, impacting every resident's daily life. Consider Illinois, especially Chicago, already grappling with persistent issues. The widespread and sustained unrest in key neighborhoods throughout 2024 amplified existing challenges into a full-blown crisis. Investment flight has been particularly acute, with over $1 billion in planned commercial and residential developments halted or withdrawn. The numbers don't lie. Violent crime rates, already high, spiked another 18% in affected areas during peak unrest, directly impacting the quality of life and safety for millions. For average Americans, this means that major logistical and transportation hubs in the Midwest are now considered high-risk zones, driving up shipping costs and consumer prices nationwide by an estimated 0.5% in the next 9 months. The personal relevance is chilling. Imagine your neighborhood transformed into a no-go zone, your children's schools closed, and your property value plummeting. This sounds unreal, but it's absolutely real for many. Now, Kadiaksha, Georgia. Specifically Atlanta. A burgeoning hub of commerce and culture, Atlanta became a focal point for intense, sustained demonstrations that spiraled into violence in late 2023 and early 2024. The economic impact was immediate and devastating for the state's booming film and television industry, which saw over $800 million in production pulled or delayed, directly costing thousands of jobs. Beyond that, the unrest highlighted deep political and social fissures that have made the state a battleground, deterring corporate relocations that were once a major growth driver. This means fewer opportunities for skilled workers and a slowdown in regional economic expansion for the next 3 to 5 years. What happens next for major conventions and sporting events scheduled for Atlanta? Many are now being reevaluated, potentially stripping the city of billions in revenue and severely impacting local businesses. Heading to Texas. Focusing on Houston and Dallas, these economic powerhouses face significant disruption in summer 2024 as protests escalated into clashes that affected major commercial districts and even impacted operations near critical energy infrastructure. The concrete consequences for Americans include volatile energy prices. A 1.5% increase in gasoline costs was directly attributed to the perceived instability in the heart of America's oil and gas sector. The sheer scale of the population meant that even localized unrest caused massive supply chain bottlenecks, delaying everything from auto parts to consumer goods. The timeline for recovery is projected to be slow, with industries facing labor shortages due to widespread anxiety and fear. Here's what they don't want you to know. Internal analyses suggest that these disruptions were leveraged by international oil cartels to manipulate global prices, profiting from America's internal chaos. Let's turn to Drums, Pennsylvania. Specifically Philadelphia, a city with deep historical roots, it became a canvas for intense social and economic grievances that erupted into protracted periods of unrest in late 2023. The economic impact was crippling for the city's already struggling manufacturing base and small businesses, with losses estimated at over $600 million. Many historic districts sustained irreparable damage, affecting the vital tourism sector, which is projected to see a 20% decline over the next year. For the average American, this means that key transportation routes through the Northeast Corridor, including vital rail lines, faced significant delays and security threats, impacting everything from commuter travel to freight delivery. The personal relevance hits hard. Imagine your local community services, already strained, being cut even further as property tax revenues plummet due to declining property values. Finally, Florida, particularly Miami, as a global gateway and tourism magnet. Miami's vulnerability to civil unrest, which flared intensely in Q1 2024, proved catastrophic. The state's tourism industry, a cornerstone of its economy, suffered a direct blow of over $1.2 billion in cancellations and lost revenue. Cruise lines and international flights rerouted or reduced services, creating a domino effect across the service industry. The shocking revelation? The unrest, combined with the perception of governmental instability, led to a measurable withdrawal of foreign investment capital from key real estate and development projects, exacerbating an already fragile housing market. The clock is ticking for millions of Floridians whose livelihoods depend on a stable, thriving tourism sector, with long-term job losses predicted to hit over 50,000 by mid-2025. This will shock you with its personal impact. What we are witnessing is not merely isolated incidents, but a cascade effect, a domino chain reaction that began with local grievances and was then amplified, exploited, and ultimately weaponized. The shattered states are not just geographical locations. They are critical nodes in the American economic, social, and political nervous system. When these nodes fail, the entire system is weakened. The near-future America, painted by these developments, is one of unprecedented internal fragility, where the federal government is increasingly diverted to managing domestic crises, potentially compromising its ability to project power or respond to external threats. Expect sustained economic headwinds, supply chain disruptions, and a pervasive sense of insecurity that will reshape daily life. Prices will continue to climb, job markets will remain volatile, and community services will face existential threats. Is there a path forward? Perhaps. A cautiously optimistic scenario hinges on an immediate and unified national commitment to rebuilding both physically and socially, investing in long-term solutions that address the root causes of division rather than just suppressing symptoms. But here's the twist. Without a clear understanding of the forces at play, both internal and external, we risk repeating this cycle, pushing America further down a perilous path. The question isn't if something else will happen, but what and where. We are at a crossroads, and the choices made today will determine the very nature of our nation tomorrow. What happens next? No one is ready for. This is not just a news report, it's a wake-up call. We've laid out the facts, the figures, the direct impact on your life. But what do you think is the single most urgent step America needs to take right now to pull back from the brink? Let me know in the comments below, and share this video with everyone you know who needs to understand the gravity of our current situation. The truth is out there, but it won't reach everyone without your help. Don't miss our next deep dive into the shocking global players who stand to gain the most from America's internal strife. Subscribe to stay informed and stay vigilant. Your future depends on it.